Hi kids. It's another holiday here in Germany, so I'm going to use the occasion to read you something that grandfather from your mother, grandfather, my father, your mother's grandfather used to always recite from memory. I can't do that. His memory was better. So in memory of him, I'm going to read it to you kids. Oh, there's Mousy. Hi Mousy. Mousy loves it when I read. So, this is from Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. Actually, Alice through the looking glass. Alice winds up going through the mirror. And while she's there, she meets Tweedledum and Tweedledee. That's these two guys. Okay? They're very, very silly, and they look exactly alike, and they're really stupid. They're really dumb. They just repeat everything, and they say everything that the other says. So, anyway, she does a little dance with them, and then it goes like this. Wait a second, I gotta get myself ready for this. So, she's getting to know them, she's meeting them for the first time, and they wind up doing a little bit of a dance hand in hand with each other. And then she says, "I hope you're not much tired," she said at last. "No how, and thank you very much for asking," said Tweedledum. "So much obliged," added Tweedledee. "You like poetry?" "Yes, pretty well, some poetry," Alice said doubtfully. "Would you tell me which road leads out of the wood?" Because she got lost in the woods. Nobody is very helpful in this strange world where she landed. "What shall I repeat to her?" said Tweedledee, looking round at Tweedledum with great solemn eyes and not noticing Alice's question. "The Walrus and the Carpenter is the longest," Tweedledum replied, giving his brother an affectionate hug. Tweedledee began instantly. "The sun was shining—" Here Alice ventured to interrupt him. "If it's very long," she said, as politely as she could. "Would you please tell me first which road—" Tweedledee smiled gently and began again. Now I'm going to leave the book right here because the print is a little too small. And I'm going to take a photocopy that I made that's a little bit larger. Got the grandfather's eyes. Levi, River Winter Cervantes, and Oceana, El Helene Cervantes. This is your grandfather, reciting to you from Berlin. It's kind of like a radio show here, but visual, so a TV show. Anyway, I'm reciting this now. I'm reading this, what grandfather used to read to your mother. He's your great-grandfather. He's in heaven now. There he is. Grandfather Frumas, Grandfather Harry. And, oh, that's okay. The book just fell over. No problem. So we're going to just set that there. And I'm now going to read to you. Take another sip of my coffee. And there's pictures also. This is the Walrus and the Carpenter. A walrus is a great big ocean animal. You are in California, you would know something about that. And a carpenter is a carpenter. And the two of them are walking on the beach together. This is a very nonsensical, silly poem. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. Now I'm going to stop and show you the picture that accompanies that part. There they are on the beach, on the sand, and they're sorry that there's so much sand. Silly. So, I'm missing something here. There it is. All right. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the walrus said, that they could get it clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Oh, oysters! Oysters are like clams. They have shells. Little oysters, they just lie there with shells on the beach. Oh, oysters, come and walk with us. The walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd because, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. They came out of the water onto the shore. The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock, conveniently low. And all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot and whether pigs have wings. There they are, all gathered around the walrus and the carpenter on the beach, waiting for the next part of their little adventure, their little outing. They are in for a surprise, I'm afraid. We'll get to that in a second. But wait a bit, the oysters cried, before we have our chat. For some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat. No hurry, said the carpenter. They thanked him much for that. A loaf of bread, the walrus said, is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed. But not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do. The night is fine, the walrus said. You admire the view? It was so kind of you to come, and you are very nice. The carpenter said nothing but, cut us another slice. I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice. It seems a shame, the walrus said, to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick. The carpenter said nothing but, the butter's spread too thick. I weep for you, the walrus said. Here he is weeping. He's crying. The walrus is crying for the poor little oysters. He's crying for the poor little oysters.
He says, "I weep for you," the walrus said. "I deeply sympathize." With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. "O oysters," said the carpenter, "you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. "I like the walrus best," said Alice, "because he was a little sorry for the poor oysters." "He ate more than the carpenter, though," said Tweedledee. "You see, he held his handkerchief in front, so that the carpenter couldn't count how many he took, contrariwise." "That was mean," Alice said indignantly. "Then I like the carpenter best, if he didn't eat so many as the walrus." "But he ate as many as he could get," said Tweedledum. This was a puzzler. After a pause, Alice began, "Well, they were both very unpleasant characters. But you, my dears, my little grandchildren, my granddaughters, my sweetie pies, you are very, very pleasant characters, two very pleasant characters. And I just want to tell you that I love you both very, very much. And if great-grandfather were here, and I always feel that he is, he would love you very, very much too. He would hold you on his knee just as I'd like to hold you on my knee. Well, it's getting late. Mousy, the cat, has to go to bed, and I have to put her there. So I'm going to take another sip of my coffee, a little sip of water, and I'm going to bid you two sweetie pies, Levi, River Winter, Cervantes, and Oceana, El Helene, Cervantes. Good night. Good night, my sweeties.